Right now, somewhere in the world, someone just got a diagnosis they weren't expecting. They drove home in silence. They sat in the car for 10 minutes before going inside. And somewhere in the back of their mind, a thought arrived that they couldn't push away. Not yet. Not me. Not now. That thought, that specific visceral panic at the idea of your own ending, is one of the most powerful forces in the human mind. It shapes careers, relationships, religions, entire civilizations. Humans build monuments, write books, have children, start wars, all at least partly because of it. And yet, for most of human existence, the evidence suggests ancient humans didn't feel it the way you do. Not because they were braver, not because death was less real, but because something about the way you live right now has made death more terrifying than at any point in the history of your species. Here's what most people assume. Ancient humans must have been more afraid of death than we are. They faced it constantly. Predators, infection, starvation, childbirth. Every single day was a gamble. Surely they were terrified. But look at the evidence and something strange appears. Researchers studying hunter-gatherer societies that still exist today, the last groups living the way humans lived for 300,000 years, find something that doesn't match the assumption. These communities talk about death openly. They sit with the dead. They don't quarantine dying people in separate rooms or use words like passing and lost to soften the reality. Death happens in the middle of life, visible to everyone, including children. And the people who live closest to it report less existential anxiety about it, not more. So what's going on? The answer starts with something researchers call death proximity. For almost all of human history, you saw death constantly. You saw animals die, you saw people in your group die, you saw the body, you touched it, you buried it yourself. Death was not an abstraction. It was not something that happened in a hospital behind closed doors managed by strangers in uniforms while you waited in a different building. It was just there. Part of life. The way weather is part of life. You didn't like it, but you weren't surprised by it. Here's the thing about fear. The human brain amplifies what it doesn't understand and can't see. Darkness is scarier than the thing actually in the dark. A diagnosis is often scarier than the illness itself. The anticipation of pain is frequently worse than the pain. Death in the modern world has become the ultimate unseen thing. Most people watching this have never seen a dead human body. Most people have never been in the room when someone died. Death has been moved behind walls, outsourced to professionals, hidden from daily life so thoroughly that when it arrives, and it always arrives, the brain has absolutely no reference point for it. It's like being terrified of something you've heard about your whole life but never actually seen. The imagination fills the gap with something worse than the reality. Ancient humans had the reality. You have the imagination. But there's a second thing, and this one is stranger. Ancient humans didn't have a concept of the future the way you do. This sounds simple, but the implications are enormous. The ability to mentally project yourself decades into the future, to imagine yourself at 70, at 80, to picture your children at your funeral, to think about what your absence will mean, is a relatively recent cognitive development. It requires a kind of abstract self-awareness that becomes more sophisticated as culture and language develop. Hunter-gatherer communities studied by researchers show markedly different relationships with time. The focus is almost entirely present. What is happening now? What needs to happen today? The future exists. They plan for seasons, for migrations. But they don't sit alone at night imagining their own death in 30 years. You do. You have a brain capable of projecting your own absence, of imagining the world continuing without you, of picturing the specific moment when you stop. And you do this involuntarily, often at 3 a.m. in complete safety with no actual threat anywhere near you. Ancient humans thought about death when death was present. You think about death when everything is fine. That is not evolution's fault. That is what happens when a brain built for the present gets trapped in an endless future. There's a third thing. Ancient humans had something most modern humans are quietly losing: community. Every hunter-gatherer group ever studied shares one characteristic. Nobody dies alone. Nobody faces death as an individual confronting an individual ending. You die inside a group that has faced this before, that has rituals for it, that knows what to do, that will grieve and continue and remember. Death in those communities is not the erasure of an individual. It is the transformation of a member of something larger than themselves. The stories about what happens after death, and every human group in history has had them, served a specific psychological function. They made death survivable for the living. They gave the dying a narrative to hold on to, not necessarily a true narrative, but a human one. Modern death is often brutally individual. You face your own mortality largely alone. In a culture that has replaced death rituals with avoidance, that has no shared story about what comes after, that treats death as a failure rather than a transformation, researchers who study end-of-life experience consistently find the same thing. The fear is rarely about the moment of dying. It's about meaning, about whether the life mattered, about being forgotten, about dying without having done the thing you were supposed to do. Ancient humans didn't carry that weight. Not because they were simpler, because the group carried it for them. You were born into a story. You lived in a story. When you died, the story continued and you were part of it. Most modern humans don't. And the void where that story used to be is where a lot of the fear lives. There is a fourth thing, the smallest one, but maybe the strangest. Ancient humans were tired, not laziness tired. Genuinely, deeply, physically exhausted every single day in a way that most modern humans never experience. They walked on average 4 to 10 miles a day. They spent hours processing food, making tools, maintaining fire, building shelter. Researchers studying the sleep patterns of hunter-gatherer communities today find something remarkable. They fall asleep quickly. They sleep deeply. They do not lie awake at 2 a.m. thinking about mortality. The modern mind has too much energy left over at the end of the day, too much unspent mental activity, and that energy goes somewhere. It goes into the future, into worry, into the specific, vivid, pointless imagining of things that haven't happened yet and may never happen. Your ancestors were too tired to be afraid of death. They were too busy surviving to have the luxury of dreading it. You have central heating and a mattress and nothing trying to eat you. And so your brain, with nowhere else to go, turns inward. It finds the one thing it cannot solve, and it stares at it. Right now, if you're thinking about any of this, your brain is doing the thing it always does. It's taking information and turning it into a threat assessment. But here's what the evidence actually shows. The humans who faced death most directly, who lived with it, touched it, sat beside it, were less afraid of it than the humans who lived the longest, safest lives in history. That's not an argument for going back. Running from predators and dying of infected cuts is not the cure for death anxiety. The point is different. The point is that what you feel when you think about dying is not some fundamental, universal human experience. It is partly a product of how modern life has arranged death, hidden it, individualized it, stripped it of ritual and community and story. Somewhere, in a group that lived 30,000 years ago, a person lay down for the last time. The people around them knew what to do. They had done it before. They would do it again. There was grief, real grief. The evidence for grief in ancient communities is everywhere, but underneath the grief was something else. A steadiness, a knowledge that this was part of it. You have the grief. You're still working on the steadiness, and maybe that's not a personal failing. Maybe it's just what happens when a species moves so fast that the rituals can't keep up.